Welcome back to the Banderpod, the poetic and picturesque podcast of Bandersnatch Books. We're a small press publisher of treasures found off the beaten path for lovers of all that is good, true, and beautiful. I'm Rachel Donahue, and today I get to chat with my friend and fellow collaborator, Emily J. Person. Emily is the illustrator behind all the lovely images in I've Got a Bad Case of Poetry, which was successfully kickstarted by Bandersnatch Books earlier this year. Thank you to those of you who helped us make this project a reality. The book is finally finished and off to print, so while it's in production, we thought we'd take a little time to reflect on this wild ride of a project and give you a peek behind the scenes at our process before you get to see the outcome. So without further ado, Emily J. Person, welcome to the Banderpod.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, I have been looking forward to this conversation. It's been a joy getting to work with you on this project, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun to get to talk about it and share with people what it has looked like behind the scenes.
Yeah.
All right, so to start off, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you and how did you get into illustrating?
Yeah. So my name is Emily J. Person. I'm from Connecticut originally, and I live in New York. And I have always enjoyed drawing and art and anything that's artistic and creative. And I was also always interested in working independently, wanting to do something kind of more with more freedom to it. So went to community college, and that's where I discovered illustration as like a thing you can do. And also was just inspired by like how many illustrators came from the New England area, which I love. I love that I'm from this area, and there's just like a rich history here with American illustration. So
That's wonderful.
and yeah, discovered just that whole world. And then I ended up going to a small school out in Colorado in the end, an art school called the Rocky Mountain College of Art and Design. Yeah, my school journey was long and meandering. Ended up moving back and forth like 4 times, but that's a whole different story. And then yeah, somewhere along the way, I kind of discovered the Rabbit Room, Andrew Peterson, Every Moment Holy, and that whole network of creatives who really were kind of connecting their Christian faith with their work and their art. And I felt like I'd found my people, even if it was just on Instagram for now. But I knew that that was kind of the direction, those were the people I wanted to meet. That was the direction I wanted to go in. So as the school I was at was a very good school and I loved it, but it was not connecting my Christian faith with the art that I wanted to do. So I knew once I graduated, which I graduated back in the fall of 2022, that was going to be kind of, that was the direction I wanted to go in, was like figure out how to merge those two things.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then graduated and moved back to Connecticut, and then now I'm in New York.
Yeah. Yeah, we can talk about that in a bit.
Yeah.
So let's talk about how we met. So you finished school the end of 22.
Yes.
We met at the beginning of 2023 at the Square Halo conference.
Yes.
And so at that point in time, I had just been daydreaming about an idea for a project like this. Coming out of the pandemic, I was involved in 2 different groups of people online, and one of them was poets who were workshopping poems together actively. And then the other group was a group of kids who were meeting for poetry tea time. And that came out of the Hutchmoot Homebound in 2020. There was a little poetry tea time video that was a lot of authors and poets reading or reciting some of their favorite poems. And then the families could have a little tea time and listen to the poetry. And so a friend had a Zoom account and said, hey, let's keep doing this, but do it together. And so, a bunch of homeschool families getting together and kids reading poems and delighting in poems, some of them silly and ridiculous, and some of them really beautiful and poignant. And so I thought, after many months of that, I thought I really would love to just introduce these 2 groups of people to one another. And then I thought, hey, we have a publishing company. We could totally publish a book like this. But at this point in time, when you and I met, I was just daydreaming about it. There were no concrete plans. There was not a title. It was just an idea. So at that meeting, like we had breakfast together, you and me and Thea Rosenberg. And so explain to me like what was going on in your life as you were coming into that breakfast and what happened on your side of things from there.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like when I think back on just everything that happened, I can just see so clearly, God's timing and God's hand in the whole thing. Because, right, I had just graduated. The conventional advice from my school and other illustrators I knew was just to go to as many conferences, illustration, publishing, writers conferences as you could, just get connected in person. And so I did attempt to go to a chapter of the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators out in Denver when I was out there.
Mm-hmm.
Did not work out. And then I did end up going to the Anselm Society's Imagination Redeemed conference out there in Colorado Springs. That was my first step into that world. And it was amazing. I would love to be able to go back if that ever works out. But while there, I was already familiar with Square Halo, but it was when I was at Anselm that someone heard I was moving back to the East Coast, and they encouraged me to go to the Square Halo conference. Just said it would be a really good time, very similar mission of both of those organizations. So I did. I moved back to the East Coast, and then that was the spring of 2023. And yeah, like I said, just God's timing to be meeting you and meeting like Ned Bustard. He also generously invited me to submit work for the third volume of Every Moment Holy at that time as well, which was super exciting. Also God's
Yeah.
timing. I was just super grateful to have a direction to go in, people to meet, and just God's grace and all of that. So yeah, it was just a really good timing for me just stepping into that world and that journey.
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely felt like coming out of that breakfast, just complete awe that God had put this relationship, like just put us at this teeny tiny little table. Like there was barely room for coffee and something to eat on this tiny table with the three of us. And like just putting us face to face right there in this moment and saying, hey, you two need to know one another.
Yes.
Yeah. So from there, that gave me the confidence to really start looking at concretely, where do we start? How do we make this project that is just a dream of an idea? And I remember, checking in at various points along the way over Zoom, like, how are you feeling about this? Keeping you updated on the progress. So let's just kind of talk through the process of like how we got from that conversation to a book. And then we can talk about some of the things that happened along the way.
Yeah.
So on my end, like the process really started on the poetry side. I had told some of my poet friends about the idea and they were all enthusiastic. And so I had been kind of letting people know. And eventually we opened the doors wide for submissions and we had more than 200 poems come in, which felt overwhelming. I mean, honestly, one of my fears from the beginning is that we wouldn't have enough poems to fill a book. And then what do we do from there? Like, how do we fill the gaps? What if the poems aren't good? You have enough poems to fill a book, but only half of them, just so many unknowns. And then my poet friends knocked it out of the park. So much quality poetry came in. It wasn't so much finding the gems among the rough things as which poems can I put together to make a cohesive book? Like what fits together? There were excellent poems that we couldn't include because they just didn't kind of fit the way the book was shaping up. And so it came down to like weeding through, reading everything. I mean, I spent hundreds of hours reading poems, organizing poems, laying out poems in InDesign, because even once we had them, I had to arrange them into spreads so that you would have an idea of what to illustrate. And so on my end, it was just laying out the poems that go together. Some of them, it was one poem on the spread. Some of them, it's, 6, 7, 8 poems. And then just leaving you some room to play, basically. So once I finished the layout and all of the poems were included in the book, then I handed it over to you. So
yeah. So, I mean, like you said, going into the project, like from the time we met to the time we started was a little like about a year, maybe a little bit more. So there was a lot of time for me to just be almost like building anticipation and excitement, thinking about it, because we were both holding the project loosely and not sure if it was, when God's timing was and everything, but just really excited about it. And having that time to kind of mentally get excited about and think about like what would this project look like was definitely part of the process. Even though it was long before starting it, I was still able to kind of start to brainstorm and think about the general direction and vision of the project. But yeah, I think so. We started with the cover and the color palette. I think we both wanted it to have a timeless feel.
Yeah.
And the color palette to me seemed significant for that reason, just to have it be cohesive, such a big project. We had these 6 sections that we wanted to unify. And so, yeah, started with brainstorming the color palette and the cover, and then for each of those sections, created a sort of style guide type illustration for each one so that we could, for my sake, actually, mostly, just go keep like a clear vision for, yeah, the direction, the visual direction of each of those sections. They all have like a subtly different color palette to them while also staying unified. So
Hmm.
that was just it was a monumental project. I mean, it's huge, and so it was like. But having just finished my last year of art school, I was also very confident that I could do it. It wasn't impossible. It was just a lot, but it was really
Yeah.
kind of exciting to immediately be able to put those things I had learned to use and kind of start to map out something so massive, such a massive project, because it was definitely by far biggest project I've
Yeah.
ever done. So
Yeah, same. And honestly, that was part of like it was equal parts terror and excitement
yes, yes.
of like this project is bigger than I am. I have the skills. Like I was confident in my skills to lay out a
Mhm.
book, to discern like themes and put things together and contrast things on the page or, have a cohesive theme per spread. But just the magnitude and the number of people being involved, it's
Mhm.
a lot of moving pieces. And then running a Kickstarter is all its own thing because we both knew going in that this whole project was dependent on there being the funds for us to produce this book up front.
Right.
And being a small publishing company, we do not have those funds up front. We needed kind of the crowdfunding approach for this project because it really was just such a massive scale for us. But then it all came back to stewardship. I was convinced that God had given me the idea for this project and that He had brought us together at that moment in our lives that was so pivotal for both of us. And I could see His fingerprints all over just this confluence of events. And so, really, just having faith that if I take the next step to steward what He has given me, that He will then meet me there with what I need to take the next step beyond that. And not being overwhelmed by the magnitude of the project or the number of people involved, but trusting that if this is something I have been given to steward, that He will provide the
Mm.
next step and the next step. And that has been just so much fun to see. Not just that people showed up for it, but that people are genuinely excited about this project with us. Like, I had poets playing specifically for this project. I just expected, everybody's got some fun little poems they write on the side that are for their kids or that are just, playing to get their creative juices flowing. And I expected them to send those poems. But so many people said, oh man, this just unlocked play for me. And it's been so much fun to just dive in and play with words and just go wild, just have fun with it. And they said, honestly, I mean, they do want their poems included, but they said, even if the poems aren't included, it has brought us so much joy just to get to play, just to be invited into this space. And so that just gave me so much delight along the way to see other adults coming to this with this childlikeness of just delighting in words and playing and getting to do this together. So once the Kickstarter was finished and we knew we have confirmation, all right, we're doing this. What did that look like for you? Because at this point, most of my work is done. I've already collected the poems. We've made the final selections. It's already been laid out. So
Yeah, so because of the scope of the project, I had to already kind of get a jump start on the illustrations long before the Kickstarter ever ran. So that was definitely a leap of faith for me because right, for however many months, we just didn't know, is this going to be funded?
yeah,
But just because of
right.
how much work it was, knew I wanted to set myself up in a position to kind of get ahead on stuff so that I could be pacing myself. And so, yeah, by then I was already a good way into the project. And so kind of happened in like these different stages. I don't know if you want me to get into just all of the details, but yeah, I
Sure.
mean, it
Yeah.
starts with kind of each page spread. I would kind of have some different ideas I might jot down, sketch out some things, and then source a bunch of reference images and inspiration for that. You'd review them, get back to me. I'd kind of refine it, add some color. You'd review it, get back to me, and then it would go to final art. And so that was kind of staggered. So I would be working on sketches while also working on those sort of middle stage revisions and then also starting final art. So it was definitely a learning curve as far as figuring out the best way to kind of pace everything. But I feel like that aspect of the project went really well, at least for me. I was able to
Mm-hmm.
kind of keeping in mind where the text was going to be and
Mm-hmm.
laying everything out, making sure the pages there was some variety. So,
Yeah, no. And honestly, like the sketches were always so fun. And it was so cool to have ideas. Like there were certain spreads that I had ideas for, like, and I gave you
mhm.
some notes, but also gave you the freedom to say, actually, but what about this? And I feel like that's one of the things that made this collaboration work so well is just, I mean, I had seen samples of your work and I was confident that you had the ability to make this beautiful. And so I really wanted to just release you to do what you do. And so I tried to give you some direction, some notes on and ideas on things, but I also wanted to make sure I didn't get bound too tightly to an idea for something in case you had a brilliant idea in a different direction. Then when you came back with sketches and sometimes three or four options for like this is how it could look or we could take it this direction and then narrowing it down when you came back with the color like the color study, honestly that level of art could have been good enough to illustrate a book. Like I just remember thinking there are a lot of books out there that aren't as beautiful as the color studies that you're producing for this. And then every time you came back with final art, it made me want to cry because it elevated it so much beyond even these beautiful things you had created as like a sketch with color study. Like it was just so exquisitely beautiful.
Oh my goodness, thank you.
And like every time it came in, I would be like, Nick, like, kids, come here, look at this. And pulling my kids in to help make decisions on some of those art choices was a lot of fun. Like any of the choices would have been excellent. And so I would bring my kids in and like, hey, what do you think? Which one would you pick? What about you? Which one would you pick? And then we would just kind of take the consensus of, we'll go with this one, but Evelyn really likes this little
Hmm.
piece from over here. Can we work that in? And it just made it such a fun, beautiful book. Like just so many little things are hidden throughout. Like the art itself is beautiful, but there are details in it that you can just pour over. And it made me so happy when Mick said one night when I was looking over some of the spreads, he was like, "You know what? This is the kind of book that people are just going to want to pick up and look at." And I was like, "I know. It's amazing." So, thank you, Emily, for elevating the entire book beyond what I had even imagined that it could be.
I love that you brought your kids into the
Yeah.
process as well. I thought that was really fun and unique opportunity, but also just like, I don't know, there's something about having learned a little bit about kind of the illustration world and how it works. It just sometimes seems very disconnected from its target audience, which happens it's like literal children.
Right. Yes, literal children. Yeah, and like even little things like there's one spread that our daughter's
Mm,
fish that died at some point in this process. He was a beautiful blue and red betta fish, and so Emily worked Joey into one of the spreads, and he is adorable, and he brings Evelyn delight every time she sees him, and so that just
yeah,
makes me happy.
no,
So
that was a
thank
lot of
you.
fun.
So, what were some of your favorite things about working on this project? And then on the flip side, what are some unexpected challenges you faced along the way?
I genuinely did enjoy reading the poems, and I'm not just saying that because I know some of the poets might be listening to this podcast. I love poetry. I love like the variety of styles that were represented. Some of the poems gave me chills, and some of them I wanted on my wall. It's just
Hmm.
they were all so good, and there was such a variety. And there's something about illustrating poetry in particular that I think allows for a lot more fun and diversity. I don't know, just creativity than maybe a typical
Hmm.
story. And
Hmm.
instead of just illustrating the same set of characters over and over and over again, like you might with a typical storybook, there's just a huge variety and fun that comes with each page. So yeah, I just had a ton
Hmm.
of fun with, the mundane aspects of the book that are, there's some more mundane poems about picking up the trash or something.
Right.
And then you have these more
Right.
whimsical, fantastical poems that I was able to just have fun with, magical creatures or characters, and then everything in between. There's, yeah, just a really fun mix that was made my job really fun, really enjoyable. Yeah, and in fact, one of my favorite spreads, I don't know if you want, you can just cut this out of the podcast if you want, was one of
Yes.
my favorite
No,
spreads to illustrate
tell
was the
us.
Jumblies poem. The characters are just so funny to me, and then like the poem is funny, and there was just a lot going on. It's a fantastic poem, and so that one was a good example of just something that was I just had a lot of fun with it. That was really fun.
Yes. Well, Jennifer
Mhm.
Trafton is the one who wrote that poem, and she also told me that getting to have that poem, like the anticipation of writing that poem was like a carrot on the end of a stick for another project that she was working on, which I believe is releasing soon. It's a biography of Lilias Trotter, and she had been working so hard on that project and for so long, and she kind of thought, okay, I'm just going to play at the end of this project. I have this thing to look forward to. And she said it brought her so much joy to get to write that poem and just to do something fun and playful at the end of more of a marathon project. And so the fact that she took so much delight in that, and then you took so much delight in it. And I mean, the whole thing coming together was, there are many things that make this book special. That is one of them. And I'm so thankful that we were able to make space for that. And it just brings me so much joy.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right, so let's talk challenges. What were some unexpected challenges that came up?
Well, where do I begin? It's a long story. So I should start with saying, like, for maybe just for the context for people, for traditional illustration, like I do, it involves large sheets of physical paper, drawing boards, pencils, paint, things like that. Having a physical space to work in is super important. I can't just, bring an iPad or sketchbook to a local
Hmm.
coffee shop. It's kind of the physical space I have is kind of a big deal. So that was also another way I saw
Hmm.
God's provision at the beginning of this project. I was able to God did provide a place for me to work right before I started this project. So I was using actually a space in my grandmother's house that my parents had inherited after she had passed away. And so that was a huge blessing for a big chunk of the project. But then my sister, who was going to be moving into that home, was getting married in the middle of this. And so I was going to have
Hmm.
to move out of that and find a different place to work. And then around that time out as well. I also got engaged in the fall of 2024, so last fall, and then married a month before my
Hmm.
sister. So that
Hmm.
was this last spring. And so there was like, oh, well, the timing of that
Yeah.
kind of works out. My husband's work is based in New York City, so we're moving to that area. So one of the challenges was just trying to plan a wedding in a 5 month period of time, including I made my own dress and things like that. So that was just like a big, time intensive thing that happened in the middle of this project. And then 2 weeks before our wedding, we found out the apartment in New York we were in the process of purchasing, it just fell through. So for the first 3 months of our marriage, we were homeless, during which time my sister got married. We were
Hmm.
scrambling to find a place to live, kind of bouncing from place to place as my husband was, working, and I was trying to also, move around with my work and figure things out. It was very chaotic. At one point, I was working in a darkened hotel room in New Jersey while my husband was filming a movie by night. And was sleeping by day for 2 weeks. And that was probably one like little highlight of
Oh,
chaos.
wow.
But it was a place to live for 2 weeks in a row. So that was
It was
yes,
stable.
exactly. So it was like a mix of chaos and God's provision in the midst of that chaos. So yeah, as you might be able to imagine, trying to work on a large physical media project without a home or a place to work was definitely an incredibly challenging, chaotic part of this. But yeah, in the end, it
Yeah.
was like God did provide a place for us to live here in New York. And so we're very, very thankful for that. And in the end, yeah, so total in the end, it was like I had to move my studio working space to 9 different locations in 4 different states. So there was the wedding, there was that.
Wow. Emily, that is amazing. And honestly, like, I mean, we were praying for you through that whole time and, praying for God's provision and giving grace for there to be some space to delay work as needed because this is really intense. These are big transitions. And the fact that you were able to continue working astonishes me. I mean, really. We have moved a lot, especially in the first dozen years of our marriage when we lived overseas, and we traveled a lot when we were stateside. And I know what that feels like. And so it was my goal to relieve as much stress as possible because I know that stress is counterproductive to creativity. And so I thought if we can make space and relieve stress, then we have a better chance of Emily actually being productive when she has an opportunity to work.
It was,
And I hope that was
oh
helpful.
my goodness. Yeah.
I mean, obviously, like you hit the
Well,
finish line. Like you did it.
maybe a few months delayed.
But I mean, like beyond expectations, but within the time frame we had set of
Yes,
we need
yes.
to send to print by this date. And so, and it all came together
Yeah.
beautifully.
No, I
And
really appreciate you were very gracious and generous in all that process, just because, I mean, it was a stressful time. There's just a lot going on, obviously. So I do really appreciate how much I felt the pressure lifted off. That was definitely huge. And so still can't quite believe we made it in time.
I know. It's yeah, a lot of prayer and a lot of hard work and just kind of putting our heads down and
Yeah.
but I feel like there were so many opportunities along the way where
Mhm.
things could have gone awry. And I
Yes.
mean, we don't have the books in
Yes,
hand
the
yet,
prayer has
so we're
not
still
ended yet.
praying that, that nothing happens to delay the process that is out of our hands. But at least with what was under our control, God provided all along the way. So we're very thankful for that. Okay, so turning the conversation a little bit, I want to know whose art influenced the images you created for this collection and what were some of your sources for inspiration?
Yeah. So one of like the main kind of visual inspirations, I think, for both of us was the poetry collection by, I believe it's Gyo Fujikawa, the
Yes.
Child's Book of Poems.
Uh-huh.
And then in general, I like tend to pull from the illustrators of more vintage books like Tasha Tudor,
Mm-hmm.
Jessie Wilcox Smith, and Eloise Wilkin. And
Yep.
so those were the main visual inspiration just between the color palettes, the type of illustration that was, the kind of the whimsy, the nostalgia of those vintage children's books.
Yep.
That was, yeah, I think those were like the main inspirations for this project in particular, but also that is also kind of what I end up pulling from naturally in my illustration work for children's illustration in particular. Those
Mm-hmm.
those kinds of artists.
Yeah, I remember one of my favorite books as a very young child was Eloise Wilkins'
Mm,
Poems for Children or Prayers for Children.
I think yeah.
Little book of poetry, like a golden book.
Mhm.
And the babies and children were so sweet. And I remember just adoring those images as a kid. And there's one spread in particular, I think it's the Beetle Kisses spread, where it's
Yes.
got the big puddle and the two little kids in their rain boots. It just makes me so happy every time I look at it because you have captured that same charm, like these sweet little images, and yet it's fresh. Like it is your art. It's not derivative. It is something entirely new and delightful. And so, yeah, I feel like you have channeled all of these people very well and to create something entirely new. And I don't know, it just leaves me in awe that this project that I was daydreaming about a few years ago is now not just a reality, but it's a reality that is so much bigger and more beautiful than what I had dreamed it could be and will endure, I think. Okay, so I have some popcorn questions. Uh,
Sure.
is there an artistic medium that intimidates you but that looks like fun?
Ooh. Um, I mean, I've started to dabble, well, I should say maybe more than dabble in kind of the printmaking
Mm.
world, which is what the illustrations at Every Moment Holy are. And I did a book
Mm-hmm.
cover in that style as well. I so far have only worked on a very small scale. I do
Mm-hmm.
love the way that work looks. And so I think that's something that I want to lean more into, although it definitely is intimidating.
I
So
get that.
maybe not. I don't know.
I love it. All right. What books did you love as a kid?
Ooh. So there is a particular book that I sometimes do point to as kind of the book that inspired my desire to go into illustration, which was Tasha Tudor's A Time to Keep.
Mm.
It's just a beautiful book. I just love the illustrations. And
Mm.
just as far as picture books when I was a kid, I loved that. But then as far as like chapter books, I mean, I loved the Narnia series.
Hmm.
I loved Anne of Green Gables. I loved, I don't know, all the normal, the sort of standard ones.
Yeah. I mean,
Uh,
there's a reason those are the books
yeah,
that
there's a
we all
reason those
love.
come up over and over again.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's right. All right, here's a slightly different question.
yeah.
Who are the artists who make you want to make art?
Ooh,
So, not just artists whose work you appreciate, but when you see their art, it makes you want to go make something.
yes. So, yeah, some contemporary artists. I love the work of Ravina Kai. She's an illustrator. I'm not actually sure exactly where she's based. Her work just every time I see it, I'm just kind of like, I gotta like draw right now. I gotta start drawing. I gotta figure out how she did that.
Love it.
And then same thing with Hope Christopherson. Her work is also just really lovely. I love the way her style just is so unique.
Mm,
Yeah, they're probably more obscure artists that I've kind of discovered on Instagram,
yeah.
but they
Oh,
are
well, maybe they
inspiring
won't
to
be
me.
quite as obscure now because now
Yeah,
we can all discover them too.
maybe, yeah. And Ruth Spear is another artist who I love. But then there's also a lot of just historical artists and illustrators who, Arthur Rackham or
Mm,
Alphonse Mucha are always just, I kind of look back on their work and it's just kind of cool to look back on and
mm, hmm.
see, yeah, I don't know, just pull inspiration from them. But they that
Yeah.
definitely inspire me to make art. I like that question. That's unique. I feel like I need to think about it some more though.
Yeah. Well, it's one that Jonathan asks of writers on the Habit podcast.
Okay.
And so it's kind of been one of those things that we talk about in the writing world. But I
Yeah.
thought, ooh, I'm curious to hear an artist answer a similar question. So that's really interesting. Thank you for pointing us in those directions. Okay, different question, hypothetical. If you could spend a day with any artist, living or dead, who would you pick and why?
Ooh. I visited the Brandywine Museum of Art down in Philly, or it's like actually outside of Philadelphia. It might be in Delaware, actually. I'm not sure. It's but that's where N.C. Wyeth,
Ah,
that's where he primarily worked, and Howard Pyle's School of Illustration was. And I just think their body of work is so impressive. His studio was massive. The kind of integrity they had in their work, just to excellence, and just I don't know, it would be so cool to just watch them work for a day. It's just
hmm.
seeing kind of their setup and how they just like the scale that they worked and but it's not even that long ago. It was the early to mid 1900s that
Hmm.
school was running and yeah, just pulling inspiration I think too. They're pulling inspiration from the area, which is something that I also can relate to. Kind of pulling
Yeah.
inspiration from my physical surroundings. In my case, more just the New England area, Connecticut and such. But yeah, I don't know if that answers the question. But
Yeah. No, it absolutely does. Very cool.
yeah.
All right. Last question. What do you listen to while you make art?
Ooh, I have to kind of change it up, otherwise I go crazy. So so sometimes it just depends on the day. Sometimes it's music, sometimes it's podcasts. I listen to a lot of podcasts, whether it's the Anselm Society's podcast, a little shout out to them. I love the Imagination Reading podcast,
Hmm.
or other artists' podcasts, or I don't know, it just depends on what I'm into at that moment. Sometimes it's something super random. I'm like church history, I don't know. But then I like to listen to audiobooks. Yeah, a lot of audiobooks. I was last listening to The Lord of the Rings again because you gotta, at the
That's
very tail
great.
end of a project, it just kind of helps you
Yeah.
get through.
There you go.
Yeah.
Endure. Like keep
Like,
pressing
oh my
on.
goodness, if Frodo could do this, I can't.
That's I love that. That is amazing. Yes. Well done, Emily, for making it to the end
Thank you.
all the way. It is such a wonderful project beginning to end. My goal as we were laying out the book and working on all the front and back matter was to have no boring page in the entire book.
Mm,
And so we have tucked something of interest onto every single page. And I'm so excited for people to start to discover all the fun.
yeah.
All right. Any last thoughts you want to share with people?
Yeah, I mean, I'm along the lines of what you just said about each page kind of having something unique about it. I think something that was really fun was just the personal touches, like you mentioned, Evelyn's fish. And
Mm-hmm.
that was a fun thing to tuck in. There's another spread though that has the book itself as a kind of little Easter egg. You can kind
Oh,
of see the
that's right.
cover. And then I had a lot of fun with, there's several kids in the book. At least 8 of them were inspired by like my nieces and my nephews and my friends' kids. So I think that's super fun to think that they might be able to find themselves or their sibling in the book.
Oh,
So yeah,
yeah.
it's really fun how many just little details I was able to include in the book. And so yeah,
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Emily, for joining us on the podcast today. It's been a joy getting to chat with you.
thank you.
And listeners, thanks for listening in. Be sure to keep an eye out for I've Got a Bad Case of Poetry to hit our store. If you did not get in on the Kickstarter, we definitely want you to get to ooh and ah over Emily's art with the rest of us. And in the meantime, may you find bookish treasures in your wanderings off the beaten path. Thanks for listening in to our conversation today on the Vanderpod. We hope you'll check out our full catalog at bandersnatchbooks.com. The Vanderpod is produced by Rachel S. Donahue, A.B. Donahue, and Carolyn Claire Givens. Audio engineering by SDG Morgan. Artwork by Evelyn Warnamundi. Many thanks to our friend Chris Slayton of Son of Laughter for our theme song, Cricket in a Jar. Find links and more in the show notes.